So a lot of people have been going online and saying that everybody should vote for Joe Biden. A lot of people who previously said they would never vote for Joe Biden. This isn't just on Twitter. It's also YouTubers like Kyle Kalinske, people like Crystal Ball, people who consider themselves progressives and who previously said that, voting for Joe Biden was a mistake because of the recent, I would say, media manipulations and also Trump's stupidity. Because if Trump had wanted to be the hero right now, he could be the hero. Instead, he's being very myopic and just listening only to a small contingent of people. Joe Biden hasn't been doing well at all either, but Trump is the president of the United States and he hasn't handled the coronavirus pandemic really well. And his people, mainly Mitch McConnell and those around him, have actually been very pro-war. They had this opportunity with Obamagate. Again, Russiagate was a complete disaster, and the Republicans could have ran on that. They could have also provided relief of some sort of for the people. It's been since March, right? April, May, June. It's June. It's getting ready to be July. People have received one $1,200 payment. Some people I know do not qualify for unemployment, but they also haven't gotten the $1,200 from Trump. He could have strategically gone in and said, okay, I'm going to give these people that so I can look like the hero and so I can get reelected. Which brings me to think that maybe Donald Trump doesn't really want to be reelected. Maybe this is one whole giant theatrics between the Republicans and Democrats, because at the end of the day, one is a snake. And they're very upfront about it. Those are the Republicans. And the Democrats just have a cute little friggin' rainbow hat on top of them to make them look better. But really, they end up being the same thing. So right now, people are rising up and speaking against police brutality. But it's not just against police brutality. You're seeing thousands of people come out into the streets because people are unemployed. They are losing their homes. They don't have health care. They are unsure and anxious about the future. And so that's why you're seeing so many people out there. Obviously, people care about police brutality, but that's not the only thing that's driving that angst and that anger against the status quo from people. We can see that reflected in Seattle. So basically what's happening down there is that these protesters have occupied a Capitol Hill autonomous zone, which stands for CHAZ. And basically that's the area of Seattle that is heavily, heavily populated, majorly by big business, by Jeff Bezos, and all of these type of corporate entities. It's a wealthier area. The protesters have taken over and they're providing food and all of these things that are separate from the rest of the city. Kshama Sawant was there a few days ago. She was talking about how they completely violated the Geneva Convention. They started throwing tear gas at protesters, even though they signed an agreement to not do that. And so police, of course, were under fire. The mayor has been asked to step down. This is just showing the real power. That's where the power is at right now, you guys. The power is not right now on focusing on who Joe Biden's VP is. The power is not on telling people to vote for Joe Biden because we need to get Trump out of office. Joe Biden becoming the president isn't going to solve any of our problems. They may, in fact, bury our problems much deeper. Joe Biden wrote the crime bill in 1994. Which Bill Clinton signed into law. Joe Biden worked with Obama during the Obama administration, and there were a lot of people of color that were jailed during that time. And before that, because of his crime bill, it pretty much laid the foundations for a prison system that criminalizes poverty, a justice system that makes it so easy for a person of color and people in general, poor people, to go to jail. And Joe Biden set the foundations for this, just as Bill Clinton and his tough on crime stances followed that whole route. And we've seen that up until now. Kamala Harris, another person that's being pushed to be his VP, has been absolutely disastrous, has jailed more black and brown people as a prosecutor than most could in a lifetime. And the reality is, you guys don't have to vote for Joe Biden. None of us have to vote for Joe Biden. If Joe Biden wins, America would go back to sleep. A lot of it. It would quell a lot of the protests. It would stop a lot of things. Why? Because it has been the Donald Trump hatred. It's been the Trump derangement syndrome that has led people to really be against the system. Not everybody, but a lot of people. A lot of people don't see beyond who Donald Trump is and why we have him right now. A lot of people don't understand that years of neoliberalism, years of abandonment by the Democratic Party has led to the election of Donald Trump. A Joe Biden presidency would be nothing changes. The status quo remains the same. Even more so than under Trump, because at least Trump, the fascist that he is, sometimes does whatever he wants because he's a petulant child. Sometimes he just goes off on his own to kind of be a contrarian. And he's controlled by Pompeo, Bolton, the military-industrial complex, the intelligence community still. He's been a little bit less easy to control than other presidents, and I think that's why a lot of people initially voted for him. But I think he's actually lost a lot of that because he's just not been the anti-interventionist he said he would be. While he's calling these protesters anarchists, and he's saying we can't allow that, and he's sending the military everywhere. He sent them here. While all of this is happening, people are fighting back. That would not be happening at all. We would still be having police brutality. We would still be having Black men and women be killed by law enforcement. We would still be having a pandemic and poverty. But they would just put a little bow on it and pretend that it was much better than what it is because we're all united in this and we're all fighting this together and blah, blah, blah. And that's where people would be asleep. You wouldn't see people out in the streets without having a Donald Trump in there. And I'm not saying I like having Donald Trump in there, but what I am saying is either we fight against the systems that led to Donald Trump and Joe Biden being the contenders for presidency, which is an absolute abomination, to accused rapists, to people that don't care about poor people. Joe Biden completely, with the bankruptcy bill, omitted being able to put your student loans as part of that. Donald Trump has vetoed student debt forgiveness. Neither of them want to give us Medicare for All. Trump said he would, but his Republican friends aren't going to allow it. Joe Biden said he would veto Medicare for All. I mean, none of them have really given any solutions to what's going on with the current economic crisis and how bad it's going to get, because it's just getting started. We haven't even seen the economic depression. A lot of businesses, a lot of them aren't going to be they're not coming back. They're closed. They're for lease. They didn't get the money they needed to survive. And then we're going to see people lose their homes because the jobs aren't really going to be able to hire back everybody. Unemployment is running out to $600 that people were getting. That's running out. It's going to set a cascade of events that these people don't even know yet. People are very confused. They think that change only comes from the electorate. They think that change comes from incrementalism. Pushing, getting what you can, so, okay, we have two choices. We have Joe Biden or Donald Trump. So we have to choose one of them. So the lesser of evils for a lot of you is Joe Biden. So you pick Joe Biden, okay. You think you've done your duty. That's not enough. I'm sorry. I hate to break it to you. Incrementalism hasn't worked. Incrementalism is what led us here. Incrementalism is why we have Donald Trump. Incrementalism is why we have an impending economic crisis. You as a person right now have a lot of power and you don't realize it. A lot of people don't realize their power, and that's the problem, because society is full of people that are manipulated by fear. Fear that if we don't get Donald Trump out of the White House, he's going to become Hitler and he's going to go after people of color. He's going to go and become a fascist. And he may very well be a fascist. I don't disagree with you there. But Joe Biden, who can barely form a sentence, who's on a clear cognitive decline, who is going to keep things by the status quo, whose VP is going to be a neoliberal, who is going to keep things by the status quo, is not really going to implement any change. What's going to happen is, let's say Joe Biden gets in office, people are going to be like, oh, yay, we got rid of Orange Man, and they're going to go back to their lives as they were before because they feel like that was enough, that a Democrat won instead of a Republican, and that's enough. And Biden's going to say some superficial platitude salad bullshit, and then everybody's going to be like, okay, well, this is better, it's not as good, but what can we do? And they're going to go back to sleep, and guess what's going to happen the next time? The next time, somebody worse than Donald Trump is going to be elected, right? Because that's the pendulum. You swing the pendulum that way, it's going to go to the opposite. The only thing that can remove some fascists like Donald Trump and fascists like Biden and the Democratic Party who are infringing on our civil liberties, the only thing that can remove that is a strong working people's populist movement. Notice I didn't say a particular person, because if we've learned anything in 2020 is that we can't count on any politicians to really take care of the working people right now. We can count on some of them to lay the foundations, like Sanders has done, like other politicians have done. But really, when it comes down to it, they have to work within the system. We're trying to rebuild the system, right? But in order for something to be rebuilt, it has to fall apart. So what we're seeing is the dismantling of the arms of the oligarchy. Everything that was set in motion to maintain wealth at the top 1% has been working great for them, but has gotten to a point where people are rising up. My point is, you don't have to vote for either of them. Imagine what you would show the establishment if they were to see, come election day, nobody showing up for Biden and only those certain people are showing up for Trump, and we have the lowest voting turnout in the history of the United States, or people are voting for the highest turnout in third party, right? If we can show that to the establishment, that in itself is enough of a victory. No matter who wins, which I still think it's going to be Trump, because Democrats are so bad really doing the basic things like taking care of people, and they refuse to do that. I think people rather have that chaos, that just chaos that Trump brings, because at least that chaos, we've already had 4 years of it. A lot of people just hate the establishment type of typical politicians so much that they'd rather have Trump. And the fact that Trump is an incumbent, Joe Biden is the most uninspiring politician. I mean, really, like, I speak to young people and none of them like Joe Biden. The only people that really like Joe Biden are on the older side, or they're just completely uneducated about politics. But the majority of people I'm not seeing are going to vote for Biden. Not enough to surpass Donald Trump's base and his following and all of the people on the right. What's happening now is very important, because it's giving us the tools and the movement we need to really take this to the next level. Understand that we're never going to get anything if we give in our power. If we all just give in and we say we need to vote for Joe Biden because we need to get Trump out of office, we're missing the fact that Joe Biden is just as bad, as not worse than Trump. Policy-wise, he has done far worse than Donald Trump has had the chance of doing yet. Is Trump a fascist? Yeah. But you're just missing the fact that Joe Biden is also a fascist in his own way. He's also a conservative in his own way under the Democratic Party, because the Democrats and Republicans are pretty much on the same side. When it comes to talk is cheap. They can talk a good game, the Democrats, but they're full of shit. You saying that you're going to vote for Joe Biden, in spite of the Tara Reade accusations, in spite of the fact he wrote the crime bill and set up the foundations for an unjust criminal justice system, in spite of the fact that they rigged the elections against Bernie Sanders, in spite he has racial issues, refuses to defund the police, in spite of the fact that the Democratic Party doesn't give a damn about you. If you're telling them that even in spite of all that, you're going to vote for Joe Biden already, point blank, because Donald Trump is so bad, you're giving up every single bit of your power. You have no power now. This is why progressives have no power, because people go and they sell out, or they're like, oh my God, we're so scared. Donald Trump, what's going to happen? What happened 4 years ago? The same shit that happened 4 years ago is going to happen. Yeah, it sucks. It's bad. Donald Trump isn't somebody I want in charge during a situation like this. But neither is Joe Biden. And you're buying into that propaganda because they're using fear to manipulate your emotions. They're using fear to co-opt movements. Obama's out there co-opting the movement. So are a lot of these neoliberal actors, a lot of these people that don't care about BLM, that have never done anything for the movement, that have never really been advocating before it was popular, but they just want to capitalize on it. And I'm looking at Kamala Harris too. When you tell Joe Biden, when you tell Democrats that you're going to vote for them in spite of all the shit they've done to you, you're completely neglecting that the reason we have Trump is because of those same people doing the same shit they've been doing for years. So when you give up your power, which is all you have a power of your vote and your voice, and your vote isn't counting half the time. Anyway, like, it hasn't counted for the last 2 primaries. It hasn't. They rigged the elections twice. There's ample proof of that. I don't have time to argue with people who refuse to believe that their government has lied to them, even though there's like thousands of books and documentaries on multiple things the government has lied about. We can go as recent as Russiagate, then 9/11. We could talk about the war in Vietnam. I mean, the Lusitania was one of the first things that people learned about, you know, that the government lied about. Like, if you want to pretend that the government doesn't lie to you and you want to trust the government, fine, go be a little bootlicker, go be a little good soldier of fascism, because that's where we're at right now. And it's not just Trump perpetuating fascism. It is Nancy Pelosi, Congress, and the Senate passing legislation to go through your browser history. It is Nancy Pelosi who has approved Trump's military budget, who has approved the Patriot Act, who has pushed for more privacy violations. It is Nancy Pelosi who refuses to give us Medicare for All, who refuses to put out UBI. It is Nancy Pelosi just as equally as it is the Republican Party. So let's not pretend that it's anything different. We live in an oligarchy. What does that mean? It means that poor people have very little power. We are in the middle of economic collapse, and that is, they're using this pandemic and this collapse to infringe more on your rights. And people are fighting back, which is exactly what needs to be happening. And in order for that to continue, we need to focus on what's happening on the ground in Seattle, what's happening with politicians like Kshama Sawant, because she's one of the only freaking few people I see doing anything remotely valuable right now. As a politician, she's able to take the organizing, the activism, and turn it into electoral use, push legislation and change things that way. That is how we get power, by being out in the streets. That's where we have power. Progressives have zero power in the electoral system right now because they always give in their power. I'm just going to say, if you're a wealthy commentator, it's a lot easier for you to say you're going to vote for Joe Biden. It's going to be symbolically better for you. It's going to be, you're going to be able to feel like you did the right thing, but that's not the reality. It is much more difficult to be a working class person and see everything, you know, go down. I will never sit here and advocate for people to vote for Joe Biden, because I know that would be selling out a part of me that's just says no corporate Democrats, no corporate Republicans, no corporate anything, no more establishment shills, no more establishment politicians. We need to use our power, the little power that we have, for what's needed, because the people that we elected refuse to go against Nancy Pelosi. They refuse to go against the status quo because they're so scared of not getting reelected. Well, if that's more important to you, then you're doing it wrong, because if you tried AOC, if you tried, you would have the people on your side. We would all go to Congress and demand a Medicare for All and demand a UBI. That's what it's going to take. It's not enough to push papers and pretend that you're doing your job. And I say that to every single congressperson that hasn't really been doing their job, and every senator that's really not doing enough to fight against the establishment, Bernie included. You need to go out there and be with the people. And when you have the people, you can accomplish anything. The problem is people are controlled by fear, and they think that they have to do this whole, we all have to hate Trump. Sure, you can hate Trump. That doesn't mean you have to vote for Joe Biden. There's no rhyme or reason for a progressive right now to vote for Joe Biden. Like, I'm a person of color. Like, oh, so am I, dude. I'm a fucking immigrant. My parents are immigrants. I know so many people that have been hurt by Trump's policies, or that feel scared because of Trump's policies, but they don't know that Obama built the foundations for those policies to happen. And before him, it was Clinton. And before him, I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on, because this is a systemic issue. And if you're not attacking the core problem, we're going to keep repeating this over and over again. recently I've been watching a lot of RFK documentaries and a lot of RFK stuff, reading about what was happening in the 1960s, because I believe history repeats itself, and history is repeating itself right now as we speak. If we look back at the civil rights movement and what's happening now, we see many parallels, but we also have to look at what's happening in Vietnam, and as well as the Cold War. That is very present. We have a new Cold War. It never really went away, but now it goes from Russia to China. We are seeing these things come up again because humanity hasn't dealt with them before. In order to deal with them, we have to really understand that replacing one figurehead puppet with another isn't going to give us anything. What has shown to be working is demanding power through a people's movement, honing in that power, building it up. That's what's working. It worked in Minneapolis. They're discussing defunding the police. They're discussing disbanding the way it existed. That's what is making the change. Change in the civil rights movement did not come from legislation only. It came from a people's movement, and that legislation would have never passed without people marching in the streets en masse. The anti-war movement was so big then. What happened to it? Really, where is it? We're literally we're still sanctioning Iran. We're trying to go to war. We were trying to go to war with Russia. Now we're trying to go to war with China. And believe me, if Hillary Clinton had been president, we would have been at war with Russia a long time ago. And you're never going to see me tell you to vote for a neoliberal. I just won't do that. Why would any good progressive tell you that that's the way to actually get progress, right? To really accept the pseudo choices you've been given, because that's not your only choice. Your choice is also to say, fuck you, fuck the establishment, fuck the Democrats, fuck the Republicans, fuck the oligarchs, fuck corporations, fuck Wall Street, fuck the banks. We're going to go and we're going to demand change like we have demanded it before. Like people demanded in 1776 when they split off from the empire. Like people have been demanding for ages, like the French demanded back in the day through the French Revolution, but also through the Yellow Vest movement. There are things that are happening right now in the world, all over the world. People are rising up. It is time to do that. It is not time to go and sulk and say, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden because I'm so scared. Everybody's scared. Putting Joe Biden in there isn't going to protect immigrants. Putting Joe Biden in there isn't going to stop climate change. Putting Joe Biden in there isn't going to do a goddamn thing for anybody because the guy fucking refuses to give us anything. And so does the corrupt party that he's working for. And that's it. He's being paid by people above him to continue the status quo. You're not going to get shit from sitting at a round table with people like John Kerry and Bernie supporters. Going to get anything. You're not going to get it. It's a waste of time. Your focus should be on the ground. It should be on what we can get from a people's movement. That's where our focus should be. Voting for Joe Biden is not the answer. Voting for Trump is not the answer. You have a choice. And beyond voting, because voting is only one facet, you need to be out in the streets and we need to be organizing under exactly a bigger thing that includes police brutality, but it's also demanding healthcare for all, is also demanding UBI, is also demanding accountability from politicians who haven't done crap for the American people, especially during this crisis. We were already in crisis before this pandemic hit. I mean, hello, we've been talking about it for the last few years. We were talking about how the economy is collapsing, how all this is happening in the stock market way before the pandemic hit. What do you think is going to happen after all of this, after we start seeing that reopening just isn't working like we wanted to? What do you think is going to happen? You think Joe Biden's going to come in with a magic wand and magically fix everything? Did you think Bernie Sanders was going to come in with a magic wand and magically fix everything? It was always going to take a movement of people behind whoever was in office to enact change. The problem is with somebody like Joe Biden, you kill that. You kill that. To tell people to continue to vote for the lesser of evils, again, is to lie to people. It is to manipulate them with fear. And so I'm adamantly against anybody who is telling people to vote for Joe Biden because that's the progressive thing to do. Of course, we need to get Trump out of office, but we need to get the systems that led to him more. That way, we cut off the root and we will never have another Trump ever again. But if you're going to only focus on getting him out of office and putting another fucking idiot in there that's going to lead to a worse Trump, then you're hurting us in the long run. You need to think bigger picture, and we need to realize our power. There's so much power that we have in numbers, and we are seeing it right now as we speak in the streets in Seattle, in Los Angeles, all over the world. People are marching for Black lives. People are marching against police brutality. But do not let these neoliberal organizations, these neoliberal talking heads, these commentators tell you that you have to vote for Joe Biden or you are a horrible person. They are horrible people for telling you to vote for Joe Biden when they have nothing to lose. I have everything to lose. It doesn't matter whether Trump is president or Joe Biden's president. It's all the same. It's all the same. A real progressive would tell you that you should vote third party or you should not vote, and to show the Democratic Party and tell them, I'm not voting for your candidate because you rigged our elections twice. In 2016 and 2020, you refused to nominate Bernie Sanders. You refused to do the right thing. You refused to give us Medicare for All. You refused to give us any goddamn thing. So why the hell would I vote for you? That's what you have to tell them. That's it. There's no point. Do not vote for somebody when they haven't given you a goddamn thing. That's it. It is going to be the end of the world whether Trump or Biden is in office, because if we don't surpass that duality, that very myopic mindset that it has to be one of these two choices, we're pretty much running to our own graves here. We're not going to be able to save anybody or anything, including the planet. Not when our economy depends on oil. Not when we have no control over climate justice. Not when we don't have control over if we walk down the street, you could get shot and killed. Not when we don't even have privacy. Not when we don't have money. We don't have housing. We don't have healthcare. None of that is going to matter if we don't take a stand as a people. The reason that we haven't had such change in 50 years is because people talk about revolution, but they're really not ready to go for revolution. They just like the sound of it. They like how it makes them feel. Oh, look, I'm so progressive. I say revolution 50 times a day. Oh, okay. What does that do? I don't care how much you love Bernie Sanders and how much you want revolution. That wasn't a revolution. That was a foundation of what we would have to take to do. And I'm not here to make another video criticizing the Sanders campaign, because we all know how that went. We all know how we have zero election integrity. We all know what went wrong. We know how the media is corrupt. We know all of this. But it's bigger than that. A revolution takes people actually revolting against status quo, not placating to it, not saying, okay, I give up. We're going to vote for Joe Biden. That's not a revolution. That's capitulation. You're capitulating to the status quo. And if you want to do that, fine, but don't call it a revolution then. Don't do that, because then you're lying. And we haven't had that. The last person that tried to take on the military-industrial complex, that tried to take on the CIA, was Robert Kennedy, and he was murdered. Then we have Fred Hampton that same year, right after, was murdered. Before that, MLK was murdered. I mean, we're looking at all these people that were murdered because they saw that it wasn't just about us fighting whites versus blacks, browns versus yellows. It was all about us coming together and fighting the oligarchy, the elites at the top. That's what they feared the most. And when they saw that people were realizing that, when they saw that Martin Luther King started talking about the woes of capitalism and started talking about going towards a socialist economy, that's when they got scared. When they saw that Fred Hampton and Malcolm X were talking about unity of all peoples, of all kinds, against the powers that be, against the oligarchy. That was what they feared. That's what needs to happen, what everybody needs to realize here. And the reason it can happen now is because everybody's hurting, everybody's anxious, everybody's scared. But all of those emotions have to be put into the right actions, not the actions of recoiling in fear. We need to demand what we deserve. Take back what's ours. People have been losing. Wages have actually gone down when you take into inflation. People are paying so much more for basic needs. Things are screwed up. Joe Biden isn't going to fix that. No person alone in the system can fix that. We need a new system. We need to rebuild. Just like we need to defund the police, demilitarize the police, and rebuild the police. The police are an arm of everything else that needs to be rebuilt. And as we're seeing it fall apart, we need to have the foundations there to rebuild and start anew. And I see very few people doing that. The people that are doing that are being vilified as being anarchists, as being these crazy socialists. Socialism is just a redistribution of wealth, guys. It's really not a scary word. Call it whatever the hell you want. Don't call it socialism. Call it redistribution of wealth. I don't care. But really, right now, the wealth is hoarded at the top. It needs to be redistributed. We have the power here. What matters is what you do on the streets, what you demand. If all of us get out there and demand 5 things that we absolutely need, or we won't stop protesting, guess what's going to happen? We're going to get something out of it. And every major tragedy and every major issue, whether it was a war, World War II, whether it was anything that happened to Americans, they got something out of it. The government has to give us something. It's not like we're out here waiting for the government to give us shit. People are working. People are fighting to live another day. It's not like we expect the government to solve all our problems. It's that they're not listening and they're not paying attention to people's basic rights as citizens of a country. If you gave people their basic needs and their rights, they wouldn't have a need to be protesting. They wouldn't have a need to go out there and be trying to form their own type of protest against the entire country if they were happy. It doesn't happen. So a lot of fucking people want to come and say, well, you just expect the government to solve all your problems. You should pick yourself up by the bootstraps and fight. That's what people have been fucking doing. Where have you been? Have you not been paying attention? People have been fighting, working 3-4 jobs. Like, even people who have money are realizing this is a huge problem. Even people who have money aren't going to have it for much longer because the system is falling apart. You don't have to vote for another neoliberal or a neocon again. You don't have to participate in this game of theatrics that they play on to see who's more woke, who wears the scarf better, like who fucking goes and makes videos of how sad they are of their white privilege. Like, fuck all that shit. That doesn't help people. That doesn't help stop people from dying. It doesn't help pay people's rent. It doesn't help pay people's health care. If these people who all love to play theatrics really cared about helping working people, they would have passed legislation a long time ago. They don't care. And they don't care because you allow them to treat you this way. It's an abusive relationship, an abusive boyfriend, an abusive husband, an abusive everything. Like that's abuse. And you let them get away with it when you tell them that no matter what, you're going to vote for their candidate. How much longer are you going to take before you stand up and say no more? Before you march the streets and talk to each other and organize a protest? Because that's what's happening, you guys. More and more of that, it's happening. Support this movement that's happening with Black Lives Matter. Support it. Do not let it get co-opted by the establishment telling you to vote for Joe Biden. People were still getting shot and murdered in the 90s when Donald Trump wasn't president, right? Did we forget Rodney King? Our attention should be focused on the streets, how to demand these people to give us what we deserve. Go to their houses. Go to their offices. Make them uncomfortable. We have to make them uncomfortable. That is the most important thing right now, is to get out in the streets, make these demands, and make these politicians accountable. They serve us. We don't serve them. They have it turned around. They do not deserve to be in there if they are not advocating for the people. It is as simple as that. This is about a revolution, a real revolution. And revolutions aren't pretty. Revolutions aren't Instagram worthy. They're not picture perfect. They're not symbolic platitude bullshit that the Democrats give you. They're not half a MLK quote that is just talking about dreams. They're ugly, they're dirty, they're bloody, they're sad, they're hard. Because the whole system falls apart in order to rebuild a new one. That's a revolution. So Americans love to talk about revolution as if they really know what it means, and they haven't known what it means for a very long time. It's time we fight for the very basic things that the rest of the world has. I mean, it's really not that difficult to think that we deserve healthcare, that we deserve free college, that we deserve not to be riddled by debt, that we deserve police that doesn't go around killing more people than it saves. It's not rocket science. It's not that difficult. But if you give up your power, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen because you already told them that no matter what they do, you're going to continue perpetuating the systems of oppression and corruption anyway. And let me tell you, there's not much more this country can survive to continue to doing that. So don't vote for Joe Biden. Don't vote for Trump. Fuck both of them. Get out in the streets and make the changes that you wanted these idiots to implement. Make those changes happen. Happen through a people's movement. That's real revolution. If you're not on board for that, you're not on board for revolution. Nothing less will do.